Well, it's that time of year again. That's right, it's Booker season. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly, and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. The Booker Awards are upon us, and while last year I started with the Booker Award itself, this year I'm starting with the International Booker Awards, as I did kind of talk about in one of my first videos of the year. So the Longlist was announced a couple of days ago, and initially I was just going to do a reaction video, and so I started filming that, but I didn't know any of the books, so it was a pretty boring reaction when the whole reaction is, I don't know these books. I had not heard of a single one of them. At least for the Booker Awards last year, I had heard of 2 of them and read one of them. But just in case you want to see what my initial reaction was to the list, here it is.
But I haven't taken a look yet, and basically just wanted to get my initial reactions to seeing what's on the long list. I think that I'll recognize more of the books this time around than I did when I saw the Booker 2020 long list for the first time. At Night All Blood is Black. Haven't heard of it. The Pearl Field. The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. We Cease to Understand the World. I haven't heard about any of these. The Perfect Nine. The Employee's Summer Brother. An Inventory of Losses, Minor Detail, in Memory of Memory, Wretchedness. The War of the Poor. I literally haven't heard of any of these. You know what? I think I'm gonna think more about these books and maybe make a different kind of video, but hopefully included this initial reaction that was very lackluster because I don't know any of these, so let me wait till I have more opinions on like synopses and things like that.
So instead, I figured I would go through each of the books and kind of what they're about, like I did last year with the Booker 2020 long list, and that was my initial video kicking that off, was just talking about all of the books. And last year, I, of course, promised to read all of them, and I've almost done that, including full trilogies in order to fulfill that. I'm currently reading the last book from that list, and I do still plan on doing a wrap-up video for it. I just won't have a video for each of the books on it, like I was doing when we were actually within Booker 2020 season. It's past now, and I feel silly still talking about it, but here we are. This year, not promising to do that for either the International or the Booker Awards, but if I were to do it for one of them, it would be the regular Booker, not the International Booker. However, for the International Booker, I do want to read maybe the Shortlist. That's my tentative goal, but the dates are really close together as far as when the shortlist is going to be announced and when the winner is going to be announced. I'll put those dates on the screen because I don't remember them. I know the shortlist is being announced like in late April, and it's already April as I'm filming this. So there's no way, like at least with the Booker Awards last year, I was like, maybe I could read all of these books before the shortlist is announced. I didn't, but I really lucked out with the ones that I read because I think I was only one off from having read all the shortlist books at the time that the shortlist was announced. I'm hoping that I'm that lucky this time around with the International Booker Awards. However, probably not. That's probably not going to be the case. That was way too lucky the first time. So the goal of this video is to talk through the books that are on the long list, basically just talking about initial thoughts from the synopses of the books, and then I'm going to share what books I'm going to be reading first. Not gonna lie, most of those decisions are made by how available these books are to me. And then I'll also go ahead and make my wild guess as to what books I think are going to show up on the shortlist, and I'm gonna make a prediction for 2 winners, which I think is what I did last time. Not as in there will be 2 winners, although we do know that that's possible, but that there will be 1 winner. I'm just going to say 2 books to give myself twice the chance to get it right, even though there's like no way. There's no way I'm getting it right. This is mostly so that I can laugh later at my predictions from earlier. That's the whole point. I did it last time. I enjoyed that I had that to look back on, and so I'm excited to do it again this time. I'm also just going to go ahead and make a blanket apology for the pronunciation of names that I'm going to do in this video. I've looked these up. I'm trying my best. Yeah, some of these are just very hard for me to pronounce as a native English speaker, but I'm going to try my best. But I do apologize. So first we have I Live in the Slums by Can Xue. So this book seems to be a collection of short stories and kind of follows maybe a conversation about materialism the love for things physically or spiritually, things like that. It sounds like it might also be written in prose or maybe just a more lyrical writing style. This book sounds really good. The synopsis doesn't give a ton away about what it's about, but I think that's just because it's a short story collection. I always have the hardest time describing short story collections that I've read, so I understand when a synopsis doesn't want to be too narrowing out of what it could be. And I would really love to get my hands on this one. This one's one of the ones that's a little bit harder and is super expensive if I want to purchase a copy. And even the Kindle is pretty expensive, so I'll probably hold off on this one for a while, but this is probably synopsis-wise one of the ones that piques my interest the most, despite the fact that we're not given a ton of information through the synopsis. Next we have At Night All Blood is Black by David Diop. This one follows a Senegalese man named Alpha who gets into the French army, and after having a pretty traumatic experience with one of his friends, he turns into this like spy soldier. Basically, like he sneaks into the German army camp at night and he will kill a German and then bring back one of the severed hands. And he like continues to do this, and at first he's lauded for this. And I'm not sure if they know that Alpha is the soldier that's going in and doing this, or if this is all a secret, but it's something that they know about. But basically it starts as them being really impressed by this and then slowly being like, okay, maybe this isn't such a good thing and maybe we need to do something about this. So this is one of the ones that sounds really interesting to me. My library has it, so I'm very excited about that. I think that this might be the first one that I end up picking up from this list. One, because I'll be getting it from the library. I've already got it on hold. And two, of the books that I'm going to be able to get my hands on pretty soon, this one is the one that appeals to me the most. And I've heard amazing things about it since seeing the list come out. Looking into it, I've seen a lot of people talking about it among favorites lists. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Next is The Pear Field by Nana Ekvtimishvili. Hopefully I did a good job with that pronunciation. I've been practicing for a long time. This follows Layla, who in Georgia is going to a school, the country of Georgia, not the state of Georgia, is going to this school that is for the intellectually disabled. And she turns 18 while she's there, wants to leave, but then she doesn't really have anywhere to go, so she ends up staying. And I think she's trying to also help out one of the other kids that's at the school, specifically to help him get adopted when a family from the US is looking to adopt a child. That's all I know about this book, and honestly it doesn't sound like any book I've read before, so I'm intrigued by it, but also a little bit nervous to read it in a way that I don't know if I can explain. Next we have another short story collection called The Dangers of Smoking in Bed by Mariana Enríquez. So in the synopsis of this one, it talks about how these stories walk the line between urban realism and horror. And reading the rest of the synopsis, it sounds like a lot of horror. I'm kind of terrified of this book. Like, not in a way that I would be terrified of thrillers. I obviously read a lot of thrillers and I almost look forward to the fear that I'm hoping that I'll feel while reading those, but this definitely sounds a lot more like horror, like there could be gore or more grotesque imagery, but it intrigues me. Like, I don't know, it sounds really interesting and I feel like I'm gonna be really grossed out while reading it, but now that I know it exists, I feel like I almost can't not read it, if that makes any sense. Next up we have When We Cease to Understand the World by Benjamin Labatut. This one sounds so cool. This one is about science and mathematics, but also as it relates to like madness and destruction. And I guess it goes through how people that could make such big discoveries are also grappling with like these crazy big questions and kind of thinking outside of your own mind. And I really like how the title of the book itself plays into that, When We Cease to Understand the World. Almost like the more you think about it, the less you understand. And I love that as a premise, so this one I'm definitely interested in. Next is The Perfect Nine by Ngũgĩ. So this book is about like the story behind the founding of the Gikuyu people in Kenya, and I guess they're looking for partners for their 10 daughters, and those are called the Perfect Nine, and they're going through 99 different suitors looking for these partners. It says that this is also told in verse, which makes me a lot more excited to read it. I've been loving stories told in verse lately, and I think it's just because I hadn't really read any before, or when I hadn't really understood that there was like, I don't know, a phrase for that. I mean, obviously there is, but I didn't really realize that. And now that I do, I've been seeking out books that are written in verse, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. The next book on the list is The Employees by Olga Ravn, which is disappointingly, I can't find it anywhere. Like, I don't know how to get this book in the US, but I really, really want it because it sounds very interesting, very sci-fi for literary fiction. Basically, as I understand it, it's about a bunch of people that are on this big ship and they live there, but they find this new planet called New Discovery, and they find things on that start making them crave things from, I think, their past. Like, I think they're initially from Earth, but like maybe generations back, not necessarily like people that are on it have ever been on Earth. And it sounds like not everybody is even humanoid. So overall, this one sounds really interesting, and I'm so disappointed that I won't be able to read it, at least for a while. I couldn't find even like a release date in the US or anything. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out some way to get my hands on this book, even if it's just like in Kindle format, but I'll figure it out because I really want to read it. Next is Summer Brother by Jaap Robben, which follows a boy who, how old is he? He's 13 years old, and he lives in a trailer with his dad. He also has a brother, Lucien, who is both physically and mentally disabled. Also, apologies if I'm not using the appropriate terms for this. These are the ones that came straight from the synopses of the books themselves. I know this one and the Pear field both talk about like disabilities, but I also know that the conversation around that's super complicated, so I apologize if I'm using any of the incorrect terms here, but I'm just pulling straight from what it says in the synopses about those. But anyways, Lucien stays in a home, but while it's being renovated, he goes and stays with his father and brother, his brother Brian being the main character of the book, and then the father kind of leaves Brian to do this on his own, and Brian's not really sure how to care for Lucien properly. And so the book follows that, I assume. This one does sound good. I don't typically like books that have teenage protagonists, even if they are literary fiction. However, that's not to say that I never enjoy a book with a teenage protagonist. I just sometimes find it harder to connect with them than like any other age group. But obviously it sounds like Brian has to be pretty grown up for this, or is going to grow up very quickly when he's put in charge of the care of his brother. So that might not even matter. Next we have An Inventory of Losses by Judith Schalansky. This one, I guess, is about like 12 different objects that no longer exist, but there's like a paper trail for them, like this dead-end paper trail. And I think it's supposed to be about kind of why it's important to remember these things, even though they've been lost to time. I'm not really sure about this one. I feel like it could either be amazing or something that I just really have a hard time connecting with. And I don't think that there's going to be like an in-between for it. But this one was available for my library, so it's going to be likely one of the first books that I pick up. So I guess we'll see. Then we have Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, which I think is split perspectives, or maybe just like the first part of it. It takes place in 1949 with a Palestinian teenager who is assaulted, murdered, and buried in the sand. And then also in several years later, I don't know if it's supposed to be present day or not, a woman is researching about this and ends up getting like really obsessed with researching about this teenager and what happened to her. Okay, it says in the near present day. So I'm assuming, you know, not too long ago. This one, Honestly, I don't know if I'm in the right headspace to read this one, but also it does sound like an important story, and understanding like the Palestinian and Israeli war is something that I could probably use a bit more of. It's not something I know a ton about, and basically all I know about it is from reading books, so I could probably use another book about it. It's just, it's a really heavy subject, obviously, and this seems to, when it's focused on a specific person, it seems almost heavier because you can relate so much more, which sounds kind of like what the story is about as a whole. This woman that gets obsessed with the story of this young teenager and what she went through. Then we've got In Memory of Memory by Maria Stepanova, which is about a woman going through her aunt's belongings after she passes away and discovering all these like old postcards and diaries and things like that, covering like a century's worth of time in Russia. I believe the family is also Jewish, so this one, I always struggle with books that are about like objects or that use objects to tell the stories, because I feel like they're really hit or miss for me, which is kind of how I feel about reading an inventory of losses. I feel like either I'm going to love it or I'm just absolutely not going to connect with it at all. This one, I think because all of the items and everything are connected and they're diaries as well, so they're literally telling a story in that they're written, I think that maybe there's just a better chance of me connecting with it as a reader. So I think more hopeful for this one in that sense. But obviously it still sounds like it could be a really heavy topic, as a lot of literary fiction books are, especially books that are nominated for awards like these. So yeah, I think this one could be one that I personally would really like, but I don't know. This one's kind of up in the air for me as well. This next book is called Wretchedness, and I don't even really want to try to pronounce this author's name. I tried to look it up, and the best that I could find were interviews that were, I'm assuming, in Swedish, because that is the original language this book was written in and has now been translated to English, but I'm not totally sure even of that. And I was hoping that maybe I could just hear what was supposed to be his name while listening, but that doesn't seem to be the case either. So I'm not going to attempt, because Swedish is really hard as an English speaker, I think anyways. Yeah, I don't even know how these letters might work together to even make an educated guess. I did sit here for a while trying, and it's just not going to happen. So I apologize. So this follows a cellist who meets a spun out junkie, is how they refer to him. But the cellist, seeing this person, thinks, oh, like that could have been me. I could have wound up like this. I'm assuming because of his past, but like he grew up in a much rougher situation than he's currently living in. And then his mind starts to glitch, it says, going between his time now, specifically like with his music, and in the past. And I'm really interested to know how this one's written, because while it doesn't say that it's written like in prose or verse or anything, it does seem like it could be, or maybe parts of it could be, because it really talks a lot about the music itself and like how that plays a part. And I'd like to see how that could be written out in a way where you really see that and you can feel the music through reading. I think that that's a hard thing to do, and so I'm hoping that there's something to that, and I'm not just reading too much into the synopsis. Last, we have The War of the Poor by Éric Vuillard. This one seems to be largely centered on religion, specifically the Protestant Reformation, and more specifically about poor people during this time who have been told that they have to pay money in order to get into heaven, and then once they're in heaven, like everybody will be treated equally. But then they start thinking, well, like what if I want to be treated equally right now while I'm alive? Like why do I have to wait until I'm in heaven to be treated correctly, like by other people? This book seems to really draw on the idea of like power dynamics between groups of people. And I really find that endlessly fascinating, because I think it's one of those topics that can always be thought about and applied to current situations. So I'm really interested in this one and very much looking forward to reading this one. So of these 13 books, the ones that I am likely going to be reading first, honestly, a large part of this has to do with what books my library has right now. And for that, there are 4 that I was able to put on hold at my library, and that is At Night, All Blood is Black, The Dangers of Smoking in Bed, The Perfect Nine, and An Inventory of Losses. Of these, the one that I am likely going to start first is At Night, All Blood is Black. I think that one sounds, it just sounds like it could be really good, and I've been starting to hear good things about it since I have really been looking out for mentions of the books on this list. So it's one that I really want to read. In addition to those, I think there's probably 2 that I'll buy. I would say 3 if I knew how to get my hands on The Employees, but I don't. So unfortunately, that won't be included in this, but When We Cease to Understand the World, I would really love to get, as well as The War on the Poor. Is that The War on the Poor. Those 2 I think I will be purchasing just so that I can read them, since they're not available through the library. But of the ones that aren't available through the library, they're just the ones I'm the most interested in reading right away, and I'm basically just going to cross my fingers and hope that at least some of these that I'll have will be on the shortlist. Now, will I read these 6 books before the shortlist comes out? No, there's just no way. It's not going to happen. Like, I still have other books that I'm trying to read as well. So unfortunately, no. But I'm going to try to get to as many of them as I can. That makes it sound like it's going to be like more than one. And I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I'm going to try my best. We'll see where I end up, and hopefully whatever I do read is on the short list. If not, I will likely still be trying to read those books that are on the short list. As for what I think is going to be on the short list based off of the synopses of these books, once again, I'm basing this off of absolutely nothing except for the synopses themselves. I don't really fully understand what makes one of these books awards winners or not, but I want to make my best guess. Best is a strong word, but I want to make a guess so that I can compare against it later for fun. So based on basically nothing, I think that the books that are going to be on the shortlist are At Night, All Blood is Black, The Perfect Nine, I think, The Pear Field, I think maybe Minor Detail. Sorry, I'm looking at a list that's over here of all the books so that I don't forget ones that exist. I kind of want to say one of the short story collections, but also, I don't know, I can't imagine a short story collection winning an award like this. I didn't even know they could be nominated, if I'm being completely honest. I'm glad because I really like them, but okay, let's throw one on the list. I think that of the 2 that are on here anyways, I Live in the Slums it sounds to me more like a book that would win an award. I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, and lastly, I think Summer Brother. Yeah, and in fact, despite that being one of the last ones that I listed on this, I think that could be a possible winner, as well as At Night, All Blood is Black. Maybe it's just because I've been hearing about it. Yeah, okay. So those are the 6 that I think are going to be on the short list, and then my possible winners, once again, based on basically nothing, is At Night, All Blood is Black and Summer Brother. So we'll see. We'll see how right I am later. Also, last time I did do like a selection of the books that I thought would be my favorites, which is weird to do this time around because I don't think I'll be reading all 13 of these books. In fact, I'm pretty positive that I won't. But just for fun, because I'll probably read the ones that I'm mentioning now just because I'm more interested in them. So will I know for sure if it would have been my favorite? No. But I'll have a rough idea if I read, some of these. I don't know. But I think The Employees, of all of them, synopsis-wise, seems like it would be my favorite. At Night, All Blood is Black. Maybe The War of the Poor. I don't know, though. Like, typically historical fictions, I don't get along with, but that one just sounds so intriguing. The Perfect Nine I could see myself really liking. How many have I said? 4? I'm literally holding up the number. When We Cease to Understand the World. I almost forgot about that one. Yes, those 5. I think of these would be my favorite. So that's the long list. We got through them all. Will I get through them all reading wise? No. I can almost definitively say I'm not going to read all 13 of these books, but I'm hoping that I will be reading all of the shortlist. So in the past, I've done basically a video per book. That's how I did it for the Booker 2020 long list, at least the books that I was reading like before the award was announced. I've slowed down on that. I haven't done a video for every book, and I don't plan on it at this point. But that's what I was doing. However, I might do it a little bit different this time around and instead just record the experience of reading it as I'm reading it and do a bit of a wrap up at the end. I don't know, I think it really depends on the book, but obviously that's something you kind of have to decide before going into it. If you have a preference, please do let me know, because I'm not totally sure how I want to approach it. I like the themed approach, but also sometimes it leads to me reading a book and really concentrating on looking for a theme. Like at first it was just these themes would come to me and it was like, oh, of course, like that's how I'll structure my video. But as I read more of them, then I felt like that was more like I had to do it that way. So therefore I had to find these themes in the books. I don't want that to become what the reading experience is either, because I don't think that that's how you're supposed to experience a book. Then it starts feeling more like English class, where like you have to be looking for these smart things to say in class instead of just reading it purely to get the story and to have that like sink in without the expectation of anything further. So yeah. Do you have a preference? Do you prefer watching somebody just talk about a book after they've read it and sum up all their thoughts, or to see the reading experience and then get like a little bit of a wrap up at the end, but not as serious as like a full wrap up video? Let me know. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video and you are ready to go on yet another Booker journey with me, because I'm ready to go on it with you. And there's so much reading that I have to do, and I don't know when I'm going to do it, but I'm really excited to get started. And if you did enjoy this video, please do consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.